Good evening, everybody.
כבוד הרב.
Good evening.
Okay. Yeah, looks like we're going to Dalet. So we'll also see the tour here. So it says in the tour. The Arkan, he says, therefore, כן צריך שלא יתחיל יחיד להתפלל, אלא אם כן יכול לגמור קודם שיגיע שליח ציבור קדושה. So it says if an individual is starting to pray, he shouldn't start unless he can finish until the shliach tzibur gets to kedusha. ואם התחיל והגיע עם שליח ציבור לקדושה, he started and he got to shliach tzibur with kedusha, יאמר עמו נעריצך. So you should say with him together the kedusha, מילה במילה, word by word. וצריך שיכוון יחיד ויחיד למה שאומר. So he says you also have to concentrate about what you're saying. שליח ציבור, what the shliach tzibur is saying, I'm saying. וזה לשונו, אדוני אבי ראש שר. So now he brings the Rosh, the תשובת שאלה, תשובה. So he says there, the Rosh, יש לגעור באותם המגביהים קולם. So he says, we should object against those who are raising their voice. ואומרים עם החזן תפילת י"ח קדושה. They're saying with the chazan together, the העמידה in קדושה. ואף לרי דאמר הלוואי שיתפלל אדם כל היום. So even according to Rabbi Yochanan, who says that a person should pray all day, no problem. כולו, היינו בספק יתפלל, that's only if he has a doubt whether he prayed or not. אם לא, אבל הכה שיתפלל כבר. But here he says, since he already prayed, אסור להתפלל שנית, he cannot pray again. והחזן מתפלל להוציא מי שאינו בקיא. Chazan is doing it because to fulfill the obligation of the ones who don't know how to pray, as we said yesterday. That's a different story. So he says, therefore, the community who's listening should be silent. Should concentrate on the bracha, the blessing of the Chazan. Amen. Say amen. So he says also, if you don't have 9 people in the shul, who are concentrating right with the blessings of the shliach tzibur, So he says, really, it's like almost like a blessing in vain, which is not needed because we don't have a minyan answering. So he says, you know why? Because this was decreed to say with a minyan, and you don't have a minyan. In other words, physically you have a minyan. The problem is that they're not answering. So he's telling you, right? Like, what's the point? Like, what's the point of doing that? So it says it looks like a blessing in vain when you do it this way. So he says, therefore, the Rosh says, every person, should consider himself like a crucial element. What does that mean? That without him, there won't be enough people. There won't be 9 people answering. So then you should concentrate on the blessing of the Chazan. So he says, the ones who are singing together with the Chazan, it's like lightheadedness. So what does that mean? You're supposed to be listening to him, not singing together with him. It's not a choir, you know what I mean? Some people think, like prayers is like a choir, It's not choir. There's a concept there. There's a format. So you got to follow the format. That's what he's trying to tell you. Okay. The Shamati, so he says, Me'aba Mori. Says, I heard from my father, he says, Shaya Omer al kol bracha u'bracha Shaya Shomea. He would say on every blessing he would hear, Baruch Hu Baruch Shema, right? So the truth is that this is the first time we see this concept of answering Baruch Hu Baruch Shema blessings brought down in the Rosh. That's until this day we have that custom to do that. So this is what Moshe Rabbi Moshe Rabbeinu said, Ki Shem Adonai Yekah, that I'll call the name of God, Habu Godel Eloheinu, right? Ascribe greatness to God, to our God. Ve'od afilu כשמזכירים צדיק בשר ודם. Says also, if we're going to mention some righteous human, צריך לברכו, you have to bless him, even that you have to bless him. שנאמר, זכר הצדיק לברכה, because it says, right, the remembrance of the righteous is going to be for a blessing. Ad kan. Okay. So that's the end of the tshuva of the Rosh. So let's see what the Bet Yosef has to say about that.
Kavod Harav. So it said there 9, and then with the Sibur would be 10.
Yeah, with the Chazan. The Chazan is the 10th guy, right? That's the idea.
Okay. Just making sure. Thank you.
Okay, so let's see Bet Yosef. So says Bet Yosef, Klomar shayu chazrin ve'omrim im hachazan mitchilat tefillah. So he's explaining to you the Rosh, right? He's telling you that he means to say here that what they were doing is, they would pray once silently, and then they would pray again together with the Chazan, make like a choir, It's not exactly what it's supposed to be. They would do it from beginning to end. With all the blessings, opening, Hatimatan, and also sealing them. They will also say Kedusha together, Milah b'milah together, right, word by word. They would also raise their voice when they would do the prayer with the Shliach Tzibur. So therefore, it says the Rosh, it's proper to object against that. Mishnet Tami, for 2 reasons. One is that since they already prayed, they're not supposed to pray again. Because that which Rabbi Yochanan said, that a person should pray all day, he's not talking about this scenario, right? That he wasn't referring to that. That's talking about when he has a doubt whether he prayed or not. When it comes to for sure he didn't pray, right? Then no. And it says the Rosh is going according to his reasoning. They wrote the tshuva, right? So he holds that you shouldn't pray a donative prayer not something new there, something novel. K'divrei Rabbeinu high, like this rabbi. Shkatav Rabbeinu b'siman kuf zayin, because he says, right, the Torah wrote in chapter 107, Mishum delefi zeh kasher sheharei hachazan chozer mitpalel. So he says that it's difficult, according to this, right? The Chazan goes prays again, even though you already prayed. So therefore, the Torah wrote, the Rosh wrote, because of that, to explain to you, the Chazan is doing it to fulfill the obligation of the ones who don't know how to pray. Because you may have thought to say, right, that maybe it's possible to say that a person who's not, that he is expert in prayers, and he's able to just talk, to have a conversation with his friend. Where the Chazan is going over the tefillah. Because he's only doing this to fulfill the obligation of the ones who don't know how to pray. Therefore he wrote, you don't have 9 people in the shul. He wrote that if you don't have 9 people answering, it's like close to being a bracha l'shliach tzibur, bracha lebatala. It's close to being a blessing in vain. And then he came back to say, Hatam Hasheni, the second reason, that we should also object against that. They also raise their voice very loud, and they're like singing together with the Chazan. Looks like lightheadedness behavior. So he says, because of this, even though they were not saying the opening of the blessings, and also the sealing, we should just object because of that. The fact that they're, you sound like a choir. Because it looks like lightheadedness. Even though he says this rabbi, he writes Katab Rosh, he brings the Rosh. The ones that are coming and saying repeating the tefillah with the shliach tzibur, word by word, even though they don't seal the blessing with him, they should object against that. Shliach tzibur mitpalel leotzit mi she'eno baki, because the shliach tzibur is doing it for the ones who don't know how to pray. The kahal actually mishtok. So he says, therefore, the community should be silent and just listen to it. Okay. וכולי. יש לפרש לא חש למנקת היכה דאומרים י"ח עם פתיחתם וחתימתם. There is to say, he says that he didn't really now want to emphasize this issue about opening and closing with them, these blessings. Because even if they're not doing that, he's still project against them. So he says, therefore he skipped some of the words of the Rosh to this rabbi. After Rabbi Yochanan, with all this stuff, so he says it's forbidden to pray again, right? As we said, to repeat it again, because those things, it only comes for the ones who say it only applies to people who are finishing and closing the prayers right properly, sealing the blessing. Because if you don't do that, if you don't open and seal it, it's like supplications and becomes. So he says, for sure, it's not forbidden for a person to supplicate, several times. So therefore, he says, if so, he also explains that the beginning of the words of the Rosh is talking about that we're doing with this opening and sealing also. Okay. Good. So then it continues a Bet Yosef. It says you can also explain the Rosh furthermore. It means to say like this: we should object against the ones that are raising their voice together with the Chazan, even though they're not finishing the blessings, opening them. Also, we should object to the ones who are saying with the Chazan the 18 blessings. Kedusha, and the Kedusha also mila b'mila, word by word. Im p'tichat habrachot chatimatan, with the opening and closing of the blessings. And he gave a reason in the beginning. What's the reason why it's proper to object against the ones who say Chazan together with the Chazan, not Yudched, the 18 blessings of Kedusha and Kedusha. He also now gives a reason why. Why is it proper to object against the ones who are raising their voice? And they're singing together with the Chazan. Says, I don't really want to explain it like that he's only claiming that it's forbidden to pray Shanit the second time. And then, right, regarding singing together with Chazan is like something else, a different point. So then if so, why did he write that they should object to the Batamak, mean that the ones that are raising their voice? Since the reason because we're objecting. It's only because it's forbidden to pray against the second time. Even what's the point of saying that they're raising their voice? Even if they're not raising their voice, so therefore it seems that to explain like I wrote. Okay, so he's giving you here some fine points about analysis about the tshuva of the Rosh. So let's see the Shulchan Aruch and see what's the bottom line. By the way, when you read the Bet Yosef and you see how he analyzes, these things, it's pretty deep learning, right? Pretty deep stuff there. The reason I tell you is because the Bet Yosef is like a very unique work that other works don't have this kind of thing. I think I mentioned it maybe once or twice, but what do you call it? Maran, Rabbi Yosef Karo, who wrote the Bet Yosef and the Shulchan Aruch and the Kesef Mishnah and the Bedek Habayit, right, and the Avkat Rochel, he wrote several very important books, right, that we use until this day, obviously. So, interesting thing is that, when he was writing these works, he had an angel that was helping him, called the Magid. So this Magid was guiding him, how to. In other words, he wasn't telling him what to write because that's not allowed. But what he was doing is that once he would write something, he would comment on it and say, well, yeah, this one is better, this one is not so good what you wrote over here. So it was like a combination, between an angel and a man. So that's how the Bet Yosef was formed, But why do I mention this? Is because it's basically, the Bet Yosef is like magical. It's like, like above human nature, above humanity. It's not just human logic going on here. There's a lot of things going on which are, above. That's why the Bet Yosef is considered to be the most important work in halakha. Because it was done like with the Ruach HaKodesh, with divine inspiration. So what does that mean? That it was you can't write halakha with prophecy. Prophecy is not halakha. Halakha is not prophecy. It's not the same thing. Halakha is logic. It's like sources. Deduction. Logic. Human logic. That's halakha. But what happened was that it was a combination of two here. On the one hand, he was Maran Bet Yosef. He was writing all these things, and then the angel would like comment, and say, well, yeah, this one is better than this one, but leave it in there, this is also good. In other words, there was all kind of going on. There was a combination going on here, so it was. That's why the Bet Yosef is very accepted. And a lot of people don't understand the Bet Yosef. They don't understand. It's a very deep work in halacha. It's a very deep analysis of the Rishonim. The words of the earlier authorities. You don't find this anywhere else. You're not going to find it anywhere else anything like that. So it's a very important thing. Maran Rabbi our rabbi, whose yahrzeit is coming up, right? I think it's Wednesday. Yeah, Tuesday night is yahrzeit. Shalom. 10 years after his passing. So he always used to stress to us, that we should learn Bet Yosef. For him, this was like the most important thing to do. Number one on the itinerary, because of the weight that this book has. So you get insights here into halacha, which you're not going to find anywhere else. Just doesn't exist. So you have to understand, right, what we're dealing with. Okay, whatever. Anyway. Let's go to the Shulchan Aruch. Sometimes you see how he analyzes like the words of the Rambam or the Rashba. These big Rishonim, these are big people with big shoulders, and he goes into like a very deep analysis. It goes for like pages and pages. Like just one little halakha, one little word of the Rambam, becomes like a whole big essay. So the words of the Rambam are very deep. You have to go very deep to understand the Rambam. Even though it seems like just like a kitzer book, a nice short book, quick review. But the truth is, the words of the Rambam are extremely, extremely deep. They require a lot of analysis in order to understand them very well, properly. Okay, so anyway, getting back to our discussion here. The Shulchan Aruch. Shliach tzibur shenichnas lebeit hakneset, right? If the shliach tzibur came into the shul, matzah tzibur sheitpalelu belachash. What happened? He came late, right? So they already prayed the silent prayer. So he needs to go up now and do the repetition. The altar right away. So what does he do? Right? He should go there and pray repetition, even though he hasn't prayed yet himself, right? For him, it's not a repetition. For him, this is the first time. He plays with a loud voice for the community. He doesn't have to come back and pray again silently. So what does that mean? Basically, he killed two birds with one stone over here, right? He did the repetition for the community, and he also did the Amidah for himself. So that's it, right? He's done, basically, right, for the morning. That's it. So it goes on the Ramah here. So says Ramah. But I'm sorry, no, I think we already did this yesterday. Let's go to Gimel. I apologize. Doesn't hurt to review, by the way. Nothing wrong with reviewing something, but anyway, we're up to Gimel now. So it says like this in Gimel. Right? If the community already prayed, and everybody knows how to pray there, they're all experts, right? Whatever, they know how to read. They know how to pray. Right? Nevertheless, right? Nevertheless, says Shulchan Aruch, the shliach tzibur still has to go and pray the repetition. So even though there's nobody who's really benefiting from it physically, because they all prayed already, nevertheless, the rabbis decreed that you have to do the repetition anyway. That's the idea, Right? So what's the reason why? Because the rabbis decreed so. Since they decreed it, they didn't make a differentiation, There are people who need it, there are not people who need it, doesn't make any difference. By the way, according to Kabbalah, you should know that repetition also serves a different purpose as well, like a higher purpose in terms of prayers. It says the Rabbi Nishchai that the repetition of the Amidah is the highest form of prayer that we have. That's why you have to be very careful, to respect that, not to talk there, let them chat with your friend, all kinds of stuff like that. And, you have to listen to it also and say, answer Amen, Baruch Hu Baruch Shemo. Repetition is considered to be the most important part of the prayer, according to Kabbalah. So this is also another reason why we have to say it anyway, even though nobody really is fulfilling his obligation from there. Okay, so says the Ramah here, if there are individuals, right, in the community, and they pray long, right? These people, right? They like to go long. They go for the long run. Oh, look what it says, incredible. It says the Ramah, the Shliach Tzibur should not wait for them. You know what I mean? We don't wait for people who pray abnormally long. We just start without them, because otherwise the community gets annoyed. It's becomes a nuisance. Also, if there was a minyan in the shul, and leamtin al adam chashuv, you shouldn't wait for even somebody who's important, even gadol shadayin lo ba. Oh, look, another thing he says, right, which is that you shouldn't wait for somebody who didn't come to shul. Oh, we won't start praying until he comes. Yeah, he's on the way. He's on he's on the highway. He'll be here any second. Who cares? The time came to start. You know what I mean? You can't wait for anybody. When the time comes to start the prayer, you got to start. No matter who it is, right? Who's coming? Doesn't matter who it is. Whether it's the rabbi or it's the chazan or whoever it may be. Right? We don't wait for nobody. Or some big donor, who donates $1 million every year. Who cares? The show must go on, right? As they say, right? You have to go. There's no there's no way to stop it. You got to go. So when time comes to pray, you got to pray. He's on the way. Good. Okay, he'll be here. Okay, so he'll miss 10 minutes. Not the end of the world. That's what he's trying to say. These are important rules, to keep the minyan functioning properly. There has to be proper conduct, in the minyan. Nobody should get favoritism, in the minyan like that, Oh, we'll wait for him, until he comes. What do you mean? You got the 20 people waiting here. For one person, you're going to hold up everybody? You can't do that. Okay, very good. I think we got the idea. Okay, maybe we'll try to do one more here. Let's see. It says like this in Bet Yosef. Katav Rabbi David Abudrahim. Says this rabbi, Shenishal Rambam. The Rambam was asked, right? Where is this in Perador, right? Which is the Chuvot of the Rambam. If the community prayed and everybody's expert and knows how to pray. Ooh. 1 second. Oh, okay. Let me just go back to the Shulchan Aruch 1 second. There may be something we missed there. Just make sure we got everything. Yeah, you know what we didn't do? We didn't do Shulchan Aruch Aleph. So let me just go back and do that. For some reason, we missed it yesterday. So it says like this in Aleph. Right? It says after the community has finished their prayers, right? Then the shliach tzibur has to do repetition. This is the rule, right? As we said yesterday, every time you have a minyan, you have to do repetition, right? Not for Arvit. Arvit, we don't do repetition. Only for Shachrit and Mincha. And also for Mosaf. So, what's the purpose of this? If there's somebody that doesn't know how to pray, right? They should concentrate on what he's saying. Chazan, he fulfills obligation. So he has to concentrate on everything he's saying, right? That guy who doesn't know how to pray, he has to listen to the shliach tzibur from beginning to end. Mirosh the ad sof, right? From beginning to end, every word he's got to listen to. Shouldn't do any interruption there, right? Meaning what? Don't talk, don't do some stuff, activity. Don't talk. And also he says another thing. If you are fulfilling your obligation by way of the chazan, you also should step back 3 steps, just like he does when he finishes. Just like he was praying himself. Okay, so any questions about that? Otherwise, we'll go back to the Bet Yosef. I'm doing some kind of like a roundabout way here. A little bit. I got a little bit roundabout it here, but we're covering everything. No way. Everything's covered. Okay, so let's go back to Bet Yosef. So this Bet Yosef is going on the Shulchan Aruch that we just did like 5 minutes ago. So, we're going a little bit roundabout. Right? It says this rabbi. The Rambam was asked in Shuvan, if the community already prayed, right? And they all know how to pray. Nobody is ignorant. Everybody knows how to pray. If the shliach tzibur, right, goes, right? The question is, should he go and do repetition, even though everybody already prayed? That's the question. So the Rambam answers. They asked him about this. Answers the Rambam. So since the rabbis decreed that the shliach tzibur should go and do the repetition, to fulfill the obligation of the one who's not expert. So he says it won't be a blessing in vain, even though nobody really needs it. At all. It says because of the decree that was made. And it says even though everybody knows how to pray, just like so it says the same thing. Just like they made the creed to do kiddush in the shul, in the synagogue, it's because of the guests, basically. And then they obligated themselves to do in every synagogue. Even though there's no guests there, just like they do also the special prayer after the Arvit on Erev Shabbat. It's called Man Sheva. For the ones who came late, the Knesset to the synagogue, like it says in Shabbat, Chavdal Amud Bet. So it says they obligated to say it constantly. Even though there are even though the whole community was there, nobody came late. So he says the general rule Rambam brings down. He says whatever was decreed for a certain purpose, right? Even though the purpose doesn't exist there right now. You don't have to actually have that condition to do that decree. If they decreed it, we do it anyway. Even though it's decreed for a certain purpose, and that purpose doesn't exist right now in this particular minyan, nevertheless we do it anyway. Because the rabbis, when they make a decree, they make it like inclusive. So that means that we got to keep it no matter what. I'll call it panim kizera shema yeh sham oto davar shenitkana b'shvilo. So he says, why the rabbis decreed it that way? Because maybe this one time that will happen that that the conditions will exist for that decree, but tzarich shiuvan zeh inyan sheim lo ken hayu chachamim notrim divrei leshurim. So he says you got to understand, right? The Rambam says that when the rabbis make these kinds of decrees, they're afraid, that if they don't do it in an inclusive manner, what happens is that eventually it'll get uprooted altogether because, they're not doing it all the time, it becomes then like a part-time thing, and all of a sudden, it's like gone altogether, right? So that's the thing. So he says the rabbis didn't want you to, get into these, all kinds of questions like this, all kinds of dilemmas, Well, the conditions are there, they're not there, maybe yes, maybe we should do it, maybe we shouldn't do it, maybe we should cancel it. Just do it, that's it. The rabbi said so, do it, don't make any calculations, keshbonot. Keep the words of the sages, right? That's it. That's why the rabbis made it inclusive, in order to avoid these issues altogether, That's according to the simple meaning. As we said, according to Kabbalah, right, the repetition of the Amidah is the highest form of prayer. And by the way, the Rambam alludes to that in his work, Mishneh Torah. He writes there, that what is considered to be a tefillah b'tzibur, right, prayer with a minyan. He says, one, the chazan is saying out loud, and the people are answering amen. So you see from there, right, that that's the ultimate way of praying in the community. So in other words, it's like, the ultimate communal prayer in Judaism, right, is like a chanting style, like the chazan says, and people are answering, this kind of thing, right? It's like interaction between the chazan and the community. This is the real, essence of, public prayer. Like we do with the Hallel as well, right? Hallel is very similar to that. Chanting, answering, and so forth and so on. Same thing over here. Okay, very good. So I guess we'll stop there. Be blessed with wealth, health, happiness. The Jewish people should be victorious, B'ezrat Hashem, over their enemies. It's time to get rid of them, Time to get rid of these cockroaches over there.
Yes.
Gotta squash them, and root them out, root them out of there. Time has come. Otherwise, you have a stable country, like this, with these cockroaches going around. What can you do, these animals? What can you do? They're animals. They're Nazis, What can you do? You can't have a Jewish country surrounded by Nazis. There's no way to do that. You gotta fight with them. Destroy them, uproot them. Hashem will destroy them, B'ezrat Hashem. Hashem will help us. Amen ve'amen.
Amen.
Tomorrow, B'ezrat Hashem.
Thank you. Thank you, Rabbi.